This video contains spoilers from Season 2, Episode 2 of Snowpiercer. I also want to warn people that this video will talk about suicide, and if you're not in the headspace for that, please don't watch this video. If you're contemplating suicide yourself, please get help. I fully expect the YouTube algorithm to bury this one deep, and that's probably for the best. The scene I'm going to be analysing today was very disturbing and extremely hard to watch. Having said that, it was also masterfully put together and incredibly powerful and deep, which is why I feel it deserves analysis. When the scene begins, Alex appears to be distracting herself. She's checking drawers and flicking through schematics. She clearly knows something bad is going to happen, which makes us ask, has Wilfred already decided to kill Kevin? I honestly don't think we can be sure. He's certainly considering it, but I personally think that Kevin's fate has not yet been sealed at this point. Wilfred is lighting candles, and we can tell by the sound effects that he's using a lighter. This provides a link, albeit a tenuous one, to the fancy lighter we see Miss Audrey using later in the episode. Wilfred is clearly fond of Audrey, and I wouldn't be surprised if the lighter was a gift from him from before the freeze. This detail, and the fact that Audrey has kept Wilfred's favourite brandy in a secret compartment for 7 years, serves to remind us that Audrey used to work for Wilfred and may still be loyal to him. Kevin himself doesn't appear to know what's coming to him. He does appear slightly nervous when he enters Wilfred's quarters, but no more nervous than he usually is. Wilfred, on the other hand, is smiley and warm to Kevin. This is pretty dark considering he's contemplating killing him, and becomes darker still if we believe he's already decided Kevin's fate. Wilfred looks casual in this scene. His hair is unkempt and his bathrobe is only subtly patterned, unlike the other robes we've seen him wear. This and lots of other things Wilfred does in this scene are, in my opinion, motivated by Wilfred's desire to downplay the authority he has over Kevin. Now you might wonder, why would he want to do that? And here's my theory. The thing Wilfred craves most isn't power, despite what we've been led to believe. What Wilfred wants more than anything is adoration. If Wilfred only wanted to exert power over Kevin, he could have done so very easily in this scene. In Wilfred's mind, what Kevin is about to do is the ultimate expression of admiration and dedication, and Wilfred wants Kevin to do it out of adoration rather than obligation, which is why he's downplaying his authority. Wilfred also shows great concern for Kevin, and we could put this down to 3 things. 1. He's trying to lull Kevin into a false sense of security. 2. The idea of the citizens of Snowpiercer mistreating one of Wilfred's staff is symbolically offensive to him. Or 3. In his own twisted sociopathic way, Wilfred really does care about Kevin, despite the fact that he's about to kill him. Personally, I think it's a mixture of all 3. For most people, there exists a link in our mind between caring about someone and not wanting to hurt them. But Wilfred is not most people. He is, not to put too fine a point on it, one sick pup. When Wilfred makes it clear that the bath is for Kevin, the director is careful not to show us Kevin's face. Now this makes me wonder if this sort of thing has happened before on Big Alice, and if Kevin is starting to suspect what's about to go down. Also, if this is a regular thing, does that mean that the bath itself is an indicator that Wilfred has made up his mind? I think Wilfred sees this as a win-win, 2 birds scenario. If Kevin has kept his mouth shut, then he deserves a reward, and a bath isn't bad. But if he blabbed and Wilfred is going to force Kevin to kill himself, well, he's already in the bath. Again, I don't think Wilfred has made up his mind yet, but he's clearly considering it. While Kevin undresses, he gives us a report on Snowpiercer. He says they seem to be rolling fine mechanically, but socially they're in shambles. Protocols ignored, borders open. Now this is Big Alice's biggest advantage against Snowpiercer. While Snowpiercer is divided and prone to infighting, Big Alice is unified under Wilfred. They have been galvanized by hardship and the determination to survive. This fact plays an important part in the scene. While Kevin is giving his report, we can see Alex listening. Her expression is tough to read, but we can tell that she's interested, probably mixed parts concern and curiosity. Kevin continues, saying, "Don't think they even have classes anymore." This fact is an affront to Kevin and Wilfred. Wilfred designed Snowpiercer to run under a strict caste system. This class disparity plays a big role in the show and in the movie. Wilfred asks about Layton, and Kevin says that he's winging it, and that he keeps hospitality out of his key decisions. This is another affront. Hospitality plays a key role in Wilfred's system. Kevin is part of Wilfred's inner circle, so Wilfred killing him is a big deal. It also reminds us of Ruth, who is feeling undervalued and disgruntled in Snowpiercer's new regime, and the groundwork is being laid for her to betray Snowpiercer and go over to Wilfred. And by the way, Kevin says that Layton is improvising, but Melanie says the same thing to Layton about Wilfred. Personally, I hope they're both underestimating each other. Kevin concludes by saying, "People don't know where they belong, how to be." This is another reference to the caste system, and how the citizens of Big Alice believe that a rigid social structure is the only way to survive. And honestly, they're partly right. Snowpiercer's biggest weakness right now is how divided they are. They're still settling into the new regime, while Big Alice know exactly what their roles are and what they need to do. Wilford waits until Kevin gets into the bath to ask him the hard questions. As they say on Game of Thrones, a naked man has few secrets. It's possible that Kevin hasn't had a bath since the freeze, and it's clear that he's missed it. He's still smiling when he asks, "What did you reveal about us?" The way he asks it seems very understanding. He treats Kevin giving up information as a foregone conclusion and seems to be telling Kevin that he's not mad about it. It's also his way of letting Kevin know that there's no point hiding anything from him. Kevin lies and Wilford can clearly tell that he's lying. Wilford's smile starts to fade. The fact that he lies to Wilford is telling. Despite all his admiration for Wilford, he's too afraid to tell him the truth in this moment. Alex appears at the door and asks Kevin if they fed him. It's strange that the writers had Alex ask this question, as it's probably the question that gets Kevin killed. My guess would be that Wilford was planning on leading up to the question, but Alex couldn't handle the suspense and just jumped straight to it. Wilford only glances at Alex after she asks the question, which suggests he didn't notice her standing at the door, either because he was so focused on Kevin, or because she's particularly stealthy. If it's the latter, that could become important later on. Kevin lies again, but now it's clear that Wilford doesn't believe him, so he backtracks. Kevin is clearly in panic mode at this point, and he's trying to say whatever he thinks will get him into the least trouble. And here's the thing, Kevin gave Leighton 3 pieces of information. 1. There are 100 people on Big Alice. 2. Icy Bob has been modified to withstand the extreme cold. And 3. The Alicians are starving. And honestly, Wilford probably wouldn't have cared about the first 2 things. It's their food shortage that is their biggest weakness. If Kevin had been honest about the first 2 things, Wilford might have been more inclined to believe him when he lied about the buffalo wings. He admits to eating but tries to downplay the significance. Wilford shows 3 different facial expressions in this moment. First, suspicion. He knows that Kevin is lying. Second is contemplative annoyance. I think this is the moment he decides to kill Kevin. He's also likely thinking about how Big Alice's weakness has now been revealed to Snowpiercer. And the third is a sort of disappointment. Until this moment, he was probably holding out some hope that he could let Kevin live, and is now faced with the prospect of killing him. Even if you don't believe that Wilford cares about Kevin, having to replace his head of hospitality is an inconvenience that Wilford was probably hoping to avoid. Wilford tells Alex to leave the room, and Alex obeys. She clearly knows what's going to happen. She glances at Kevin once before leaving, showing us that a part of her, however small, does feel something at Kevin's imminent demise. Wilford watches her go, possibly because he wants to shield her from Kevin's death. Now this is not an act for someone else's benefit. Wilford genuinely cares about Alex. I've heard theories that Melanie is Wilford's ex-wife and that Alex is his daughter. My main reservation with this theory is that Rowan Blanchard is part Syrian and Armenian. Alex clearly didn't get that from Melanie, so it stands to reason that her father must have had Middle Eastern heritage, i.e. not Wilford. Unless this is like Hamilton and we're just supposed to ignore everyone's races. Biology aside, it's clear that Wilford and Alex do have a father-daughter type relationship. I could also believe that Wilford has feelings for Melanie, which likely made her betrayal hurt all the more. But anyway, the point is, despite Wilford asking Alex to do all these terrible things, he does still care about her in his own crazy way. Something I thought was weird was that Alex shuts herself into the cockpit, but Wilford leaves his bathroom door open. Surely the logical thing would be for the opposite to happen. This feels like a deliberate choice, and I think it's done for 3 or maybe 4 reasons. 1. Wilford doesn't want Kevin to feel trapped. Once again, adoration, not obligation. 2. Wilford is comfortable exposing himself. This is reiterated in a moment when he disrobes in front of Kevin, and is probably a setup for when he goes up train. By going deep into enemy territory, he exposes himself in a different way, but again, is totally calm and collected. He exudes complete confidence, and it makes sense that he would leave his bathroom door open. 3. Wilford doesn't move for people, people move for Wilford. If Alex has to shut a massive metal door so that Wilford can leave his bathroom door open, so be it. A possible 4th explanation is that the writers want us to know this big door exists, because it's going to be used later. Alex sits down and listens to her music, and the song choice is excellent. The song is called This World by 07. While the tone of the song is very bleak, the lyrics themselves convey a very hopeful message. Here are the lyrics if you want to have a read. The basic message of the song is that no matter how dire things may look, the world will keep turning, humanity will endure, and things will get better. In the context of Snowpiercer, it's a reference to the incoming revelation that the Earth is heating back up again. Especially the chorus. This world is still afloat, no, not in Noah's boat. We've only lost the vision of the stars we're meant to be. The reference to Noah's Ark is especially relevant because of the parallels between it and Snowpiercer. The lyrics of the song remind us of something that the characters have forgotten. There is a world outside of the train, and one day they'll go back out there. Not only are things not as bad as they seem, but they're also about to get a lot better. What's really tragic is that Kevin will never know that the Earth is warming back up. Recolonization will be possible in their lifetimes, but not in his. The message that life gets better is obviously very anti-suicide, and that's worth pointing out. Having said that, Kevin doesn't commit suicide because he's depressed. The bleak tone creates a feeling of empathy with the listener, similar to what Wilford is trying to do with Kevin. It says, "I'm right there with you." The tone stoops to the listener's level, and the lyrics picks them up. It's a great song, and a great accompaniment for this scene. Now, the assumption I drew was that Alex is listening to music to drown out Kevin's screams, but there is no screaming. This suggests to me that Wilford has executed people before and that forced suicide isn't his usual method. I'll talk a bit more about this later. Ultimately, Alex putting on headphones is just meant to build suspense for the audience. Back to the bathroom, we see Wilford getting undressed. This tells us three things. One, like I said before, he doesn't even flinch at exposing himself. He seems totally fearless. When he's on Snowpiercer, he's surrounded by massive crowds of people, some of whom clearly don't like him and could kill him at any moment. Icy Bobs and Sykes and all the brakemen wouldn't be able to stop them, but Wilford is totally cool. 2. With Kevin out of his uniform and Wilford out of his robe, both of them naked in the bath together, Wilford is further downplaying his authority. Naked men are equal men. The bath is reasonably sized, but with the two of them in there, they both have to curl up. It's Wilford trying to say that they're all in this together. Wilford's crew are crammed into 40 cars, while Snowpiercer's 994 are on the other side of the door. Wilford is doing everything he can to maintain the solidarity between the crew of Big Alice. It's their greatest and most important advantage. And 3, it's possible that Kevin is gay, and Wilford is hoping that he'll be attracted to his naked body. Like I said, Wilford craves adoration, and if he knows that Kevin is gay, then this could be some really sick way of trying to get it. Quick side note, Wilford leaves on his bracelet and his ring. Leighton also wears a bracelet. I don't know if that means anything. I just wanted to point it out. I'd love to hear what you guys think it means. Kevin is clearly afraid at this point, but he's holding out hope that Wilford will let him live. Wilford continues to speak gently to Kevin. He doesn't outright accuse him of lying or intentionally doing the wrong thing. He speaks to Kevin like he's a child. "You showed them we were hungry, Kevin. That's a secret, a vulnerability." Over the last 3 episodes, Big Alice has been shown to have a lot of advantages on Snowpiercer. They have a powerful engine, superior life support, better medicine, and a dedicated crew, united under the charismatic savior of humanity. But the interrogation scene earlier in the episode showed us their greatest weakness. They're starving. Wilford didn't just latch onto Snowpiercer because he wanted to. He did it because Big Alice is on their last legs. All Snowpiercer needs to do is wait Wilford out, and now they know that. Wilford has lost the upper hand in this war. Kevin nods along, perhaps showing how ingrained his obedience to Wilford is, but continues to try to downplay it. Wilford asks, "What about the mangoes you got at the border?" Again, not accusing Kevin, but in a tone that lets him know he's done the wrong thing. Kevin's shaking now. He's no longer afraid, because fear comes from uncertainty, and Kevin is now certain that he's going to die. He tells Wilford that he got the mango to boost morale, but he says it weakly. He knows Wilford isn't going to change his mind. Kevin doesn't want to die. It's highlighting how messed up this whole situation is. We see Alex gazing up train. It's hard to tell what she's thinking. She can't see Snowpiercer from her window, only Big Alice, so maybe she's thinking about how her world has changed, and how they're now under threat from invaders. She also seems mildly disturbed by what's about to happen to Kevin. Wilford concludes his condemnation. "You opened the door for them. You let them into my house. So here we are." Now this could be an indicator that Wilford had already decided to execute Kevin for allowing the battle in episode 1 to occur. He allows the Snowpiercers to violate his sanctum, and perhaps, in Wilford's eyes, that alone was deserving of death. The words "here we are" have a double meaning. He says "here we are" as in "here's the razor," and "here we are" as in "here we are in this terrible situation." Again, Wilford is trying to downplay his authority. Like, sure, Kevin has to kill himself, but Wilford has to live in this messed up world. That's obviously a terrible thing to imply, but Wilford really doesn't want Kevin to say no, because that would be a massive hit to his ego. Now, I spent the whole time during this scene thinking to myself, Big Alice's solidarity is their greatest strength. Isn't Wilford going to jeopardize that if he executes one of his inner circle? But when Wilford handed Kevin the razor, all of that changes. He doesn't even need to execute Kevin. The razor isn't even open when Wilford gives it to him. He's trying to make it seem like Kevin's decision, and by doing so, preserving the unity in Big Alice. Kevin opens the razor and looks at the blade. Now he tells Wilford the truth. "I don't think I can do this." Wilford tries to comfort him. Like I said, he really wants Kevin to go through with this. "It's been an honor, son. An honor." This is the second time Wilford has called Kevin son during this scene. Telling someone that's been an honour working with them is a pretty standard line, especially in movies, but Wilford gives it new life in a way. He says it with genuine feeling and emphasis. He wants Kevin to know that he likes him and that he's proud of him and that he'll miss him. And honestly, I don't think that's entirely false. Wilford is not completely without compassion, even though it certainly seems like it in this scene. He tells Kevin that he served the mission well. I'm not exactly sure what Wilford means by the mission, but it does evoke a strong sense of purpose. In the movie, Wilford is always spoken about with religious connotations, and Wilford is sort of evoking that now. They have a mission, the mission, their divine duty to retake Snowpiercer and guide humanity into the future. Importantly, Wilford doesn't say, "You served me well," once again downplaying his authority and suggesting to Kevin that they all have a higher purpose. Many think of Wilford as a god. It's unclear what Wilford himself thinks. Personally, I'd say if he didn't think of himself as divine before, he certainly does now. Wilford is trying to comfort Kevin by telling him that his duty is done, that despite this mistake that cost him his life, he's done a good job. Wilford looks into Kevin's eyes when he says this, but then looks back to the razor expectantly. He's applying pressure. Despite the feigned casualness, Kevin really doesn't have a choice. Kevin puts the razor on his wrist, and his resolve falters again. Who will run hospitality? Kevin is stalling here, but this question is an important one. Part of Kevin is probably hoping that Wilford will say he's irreplaceable and suddenly decide to spare him. In fact, the idea that Kevin is replaceable is probably quite saddening to him. Kevin's work defines him. It's the last thing he asks about before he dies, and it's the one thing that he thinks might make Wilford value him enough to spare his life. Wilford doesn't tell Kevin who'll replace him, but I'm calling it now, it'll be Ruth. Wilford's time on Snowpiercer is spent testing the waters to see who's loyal to him. At the hostage trade, he greets Roche and gets basically nothing back. But when he greets Ruth, she makes it very clear that she's still loyal. Either she'll betray Snowpiercer, or she'll seriously consider it. Wilford looks disappointed at Kevin's hesitation. He probably had an image in his mind of Kevin obeying his unspoken order without question. He guides the razor to Kevin's wrist. You're free of that now, Kevin. All your troubles. Wilford is trying to comfort Kevin, partly because, again, I believe he does care about him in some sick way, but also because he really doesn't want Kevin to refuse. Then he speaks the last words Kevin will ever hear. You're warm, and you're free. Those are two things Kevin will never be while he lives, warm and free. Very few people have been either of those things since the freeze. Two things Kevin must crave. Wilford takes his hand away from the razor, restoring control to Kevin, probably as much for his benefit as for Kevin's. Kevin closes his eyes, and it looks like he's going to keep them closed, but he decides to meet his death with his eyes open. He looks Wilford straight in the eyes and tries to smile. In these last moments, the lyrics of the song are, another night is gone, a new day's begun, even your dreams, they can be real. Kevin doesn't want to die, but he does want to be free. Then he does the deed. It's clear that he's in pain, but he fights through it and continues to stare at Wilford. Wilford looks at the blood and smiles for a split second, almost unnoticeably. It's a classic Sean Bean move that works really well here. He looks back up at Kevin, who begins to lose consciousness mercifully quickly. Wilford smiles again. He's glad. Of course he is. He wants power and admiration, and he sees what Kevin has done as a testament to both. Quick history lesson here. This is a thing that did occasionally happen in ancient Rome. If someone was sentenced to death, the emperor could grant them the option of taking their own lives instead of being executed. Back then, it was seen as a privilege and an honor. You got to die in the comfort of your own home and on your own terms. During Nero's reign, lots of people were accused of treason, and most of them were executed. But when Nero's old tutor Seneca was accused, Nero allowed him to take his own life, as a gesture of goodwill for his former mentor. From this we can get two takeaways. One, Kevin couldn't really refuse this. Either he killed himself or someone else would kill him. And two, Wilford and Kevin probably see this as a privilege, like the ancient Romans. Wilford has decided that Kevin was deserving of death, but he allowed him to die in comfort and dignity. Cleanly, as he put it. So I think it's possible that people on Big Alice have been executed before, but this might be the first time that forced suicide was the method. Now the really messed up part. Jupiter comes in and begins licking at the bloody bathwater. Luckily for Kevin, he doesn't seem to notice and completely passes out a second or two later. And as soon as he does, we see a disturbing look of elation and relief on Wilford's face. He's still powerful. He's still adored. He pats Jupiter's head. Now I think Jupiter is being set up to maul someone later in the season, or possibly even Wilford himself later down the track. When Jupiter is done barking at Melanie, Wilford says, I was half hoping she would eat you. And now we've seen that Jupiter does have a taste for human blood. Finally, we zoom out from the icy window and pan around to see the endless frozen landscape bisected by Snowpiercer, 1,034 cars long. It's a bleak picture, but we can see the snow, a reminder that, as the song says, we still have hope. Well, that's all I've got for you lovely passengers. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll try not to make you wait so long for the next one. And once again, if you are feeling suicidal, please get professional help. See you later.